Good morning. Today we're going to overhaul my big crosscut sled, and we're going to build a new crosscut sled. If you want to see how we do that, stay tuned because that's what we're going to do today. Well, good morning and welcome to Memphis Monday 394. It's our 30th week, year 8. A few weeks ago, one of our viewers commented and said, hey, instead of complaining about the table sled, why don't you build a new one? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to build some new table sled. It's going to be totally conventional, and I'll show you all the steps, and should be pretty fun. So let's knock off the chit chat and get to work. This is a little sketch of the one we're going to make. It's going to be it's only going to have the back stop here. It's not going to have the front part. And I'm going to put a little blade guard back here. And I'm going to have it extend past the backstop a little bit here on the back. Here's our tracking material. Here's our backstop. Here's our table sled base. But before we get started on this, let's take a look at the old one. Here's the old one. The problem is it's about 15 years old or more, and it's real heavy. And I got this, backstop here, but then I have another one on the front, which I really you don't even need that. And it's real heavy, and the tracks, I've replaced the tracks several times, and they're still loose. But it's still, I have a carpenter square here, and the backstop is still square to the blade. So, something to think about. You can see here that the blade and the backstop are nicely lined up. Now, 15 years ago, I didn't care how heavy this thing was, but now I do. These are the tracks, and I see two problems right off the bat. First one is that the tracks are made out of red oak, and red oak is very environmentally sensitive, and swells and contracts and does all kinds of weird stuff. And then the second problem is I have way too much of a camber on this. This is just rounded over. Got way too much of a, I bet I did that. See how that's rounded over? Shouldn't be like that. You need to knock that edge off, but not rounded over like that. That causes it to wander around in the track. And I know I don't remember why I did it, but I can figure out why I did it. And I think the tracks weren't fitting right, so I just sanded them until they did. I'll take these tracks off. Hopefully I didn't glue them. Sure, I wasn't that stupid. a minute. I mean, it's not that stupid. They have to be glued. If they're not glued, that's my problem. They're not glued. Well, there's my problem right there. Should have been glued. So I think what I'm gonna do is cut this back part off here, put some new tracks on this thing, and see if we can't make it work. I'll make some new tracks here for our old sled. What I'll do is, this is hard maple, I'll run this through the thickness planer until it fits in that dado there. Where I got it, where it fits in there perfect now. Now I need to cut off a couple of strips that are that thick. Okay, next step, I got my little runners here. What I'm gonna do is glue the runners to the back of my sled. Now since my backstop is already connected, I'm going to have to line my backstop up with the blade right now. Okay, you see I'm doing that? I got my T-square lined up on my backstop, and the 90-degree angle is now parallel with the blade. You see what I just did? I just moved it. Well, it's been about an hour. Let's take these weights off and see if this thing's stuck down. Now it might be stuck a little. It is. There it goes. Now this isn't any big deal. I just countersunk that hole right there, and I'm putting little screws holding these tracks in. They're already glued, but you want to put, you want to put little screws in there anyway. Well, you saw me cutting a test piece, and seems to be right on. Okay, we fixed our old table saw sled. Did a little practice. This is kind of the idea we're going to have on the other one. Let's take a look at the other one. Okay, first thing I need to do is take this back, whatever that back part's called right there. It has to really have a square corner to it. Now what this is two pieces of hard maple glued together. I'll square this up, and then we're going to round over some of the edges. Let's get to it. Okay, we're back to gluing. What you do is you put these washers in the dado to raise the tracks up above the deck here, and then we'll glue this on just like we did the other one. Okay, I put glue on the tracks. I got the fence over there. Now it doesn't strictly matter if it is lined up with this fence or not, because we line the sled up with the saw, not the fence, but we'll line it up with the fence just to keep it from looking goofy. Okay, we'll let that sit for a few hours and glue those runners in, and then I'll show you how to line up the backstop. Well, I got the tracks glued on. If you're making one of these and you're gonna make it fancy, you might want to just use hot glue to install those runners. I used regular wood glue, so changing the runners on this thing would be very difficult, if not impossible. Okay, our next step is to install this backstop here, or wood to go against. Now what we got to do is we have to make sure that this thing is perfectly perpendicular to the blade. So our first thing we've got to do is we've got to cut this board, we'll cut it almost in half so that we can line this blade. So let's do that first. Now what we're doing here is establishing a kerf, and we'll be lining the backstop up to the kerf, not the blade. That's the best way to do it. So let's make that kerf. Okay, what I'm doing here is attaching the backstop to the deck here with a single screw. That way I can rotate the deck and get it perpendicular to the kerf. Now I got to be careful here that I make sure I countersink this screw so it doesn't rub against the saw. These countersink bits have little set screws right here, and what happened just then is I didn't have these tight, so it was spinning. So let's get back to it. Now swing it around. I'll show you the next step. Okay, we're going to line this backstop up perpendicular to the kerf, but we're not just going to eyeball it here. You look around your shop, you'll find pieces of metal. In this case, this carpenter square is exactly the width of that kerf. So I can put my T-square right up against that carpenter square and adjust my backstop until it's exactly perpendicular to the kerf. So here's the whole scam. You can see that the back of the T-square is up against the backstop, and the ruler is up against the kerf. I don't want to lose my alignment here, so I put a clamp on it, double and triple checked it, and what I'm going to do now is put a couple of brads under there just to hold it until I screw it. Okay, now we'll go ahead and cut this thing all the way through. And we'll talk about how the thing operates. Now you can see the kerf goes all the way through, and it'll be up on that backstop a little bit further too. And it may seem strange that you're really cutting that base right there. You're cutting it into two pieces. And you may be wondering, how come the thing just didn't flop in the breeze, since the two pieces of plywood aren't even connected? Let's talk about that. So all these table sleds are really two table sleds held together by the common backstop. Here's the backstop. And that backstop can be like cut halfway through even. And then the two sides, I'll make this kerf bigger so for illustration purposes. So there's the two sides, and it's connected. Each one of these sides are connected like that. And then what keeps them, each side then has a runner underneath going down the middle. That keeps it in alignment. So these two sides really, these two sides operate independently, except for the fact that the backstop pushes them both through at the same time. And they can't get, they can't get twisted because the tracks, if the tracks are done right, that keeps it going straight. Now, sometimes people like that will make one of these and put another backstop down here at the end, like the one we overhauled there. Now that keeps flopping around in storage and stuff, but what it does is it limits this distance right here. If you have something that's a little bit wider than your sled, this backstop gets in your way. Well, it does for 394. We built a cross-cut sled. I show you how to align the backstop. Let's give this thing a test and see if it's making square cuts. Well, this small piece of wood anyway, nice square cut. Now the longer or the wider the piece is when you cut these, the more chance it'll be out of alignment. But so far it looks pretty good. Well, that does it for Memphis Monday 394. Today we overhauled a crosscut sled, my old one. It's about 15 years old. And we built a new one, a little smaller version. I think takeaways are the process for aligning the backstop to the blade. There's other ways to do it, but I think that's probably the best. Where you put something down in the kerf to align your square up to, and and then get it lined up. Another thing, another takeaway is don't use red oak for your runners. it it swells and shrinks and warps and twists and all that stuff. And also, if you're making an elaborate one, you don't glue the runners down like I did. Use hot glue or something that you can peel off later if you want to change those runners. But that the one we built, it'll give way. The whole thing will give way before the runners do. All right, like, favorite, and share, and all the stuff you do on the internet. But most important, make sure you're back here next week for another exciting Memphis Monday. Thanks for playing along.